Hey everybody, I'd like to welcome you to the AwanaYM Google Hangout. It's a little chilly outside here in Chicago. It actually has dipped down below the 50s, so we're in the 40s. And I am super excited because all the leaves are falling. It's gorgeous. If you ever get a chance to come to Chicago, you should come in the fall, best time of year, eat some chili and hot dogs and watch football. It's perfect. However, this also starts to raise some problems for some of you. Before, you may have been able to do your interactions, games, things like that, all of them outside. You had plenty of space to play, you had soccer fields, you had all kinds of parking lots and basketball hoops, and now what? Because you don't have a gym, or you don't have the spaces being occupied by somebody else. You're going to have to go inside because now it's just too cold to stay outside. And we deal with this all the time here. We have this problem consistently. For all of you people out in California, this isn't a problem. You can ignore the segment. But for all the people that are like me that live in the Midwest and it gets cold, I just want you to understand this is a common problem, and I'd like to suggest a couple of different alternatives. If we don't have a big space, we can't play a game. The first thing I'd like to tell you is you can play games wherever you want to play them, because ultimately your kids can play against the clock. They can play in small rooms. They can play in small groups. You can split them up. I've done all kinds of different possibilities, but you can play games. You're just going to have to learn to think differently. The first suggestion I make to people all the time is, and they say stuff like, well, we don't have space to run because we got boys and they want to run, or girls that want to run. For that. And my first question is, do you have a hallway, a long hallway in your church? Now, you might not be able to run games on a circle or even play basketball, but if you have a long hallway and your church is not filled at that moment, I use long hallways all the time to run games, because you can do it there and back. You can set up things where you have students, all of you run down there, put the clothes, all this bunch of clothes in a box on, run back, take it off, the next person puts it on, runs it back. You can do this back and forth if you have a long stretch. Think about that of a Bible study. Hey, tell them to move. You can use the. That's a great space to use. The second thing that I've done several times is I've sent students in teams spaces because maybe they need smaller places, but to look for things. I've done ones where I did scavenger hunts and actually put things in certain places. We've done things where we had them take their phones or their iPods or whatever they're bringing with them and take pictures of a particular thing. It's a great way to kind of spread them out and get them moving around, but they have a timer, so they know, like, we have 5 minutes to be back with 4 pictures, and they all have to fulfill these kind of criteria. As you start thinking about moving them inside, start rethinking about the spaces that you're using, because ultimately you may have way more space than you think. The last space you need to think about is the space inside their head. Sometimes just making the game go internal creates a bunch of different spaces. They don't actually have to move. Figure this out. Answer this question. Think this through. Here's a puzzle to solve. All of those things become internal games that then lead to competition that can essentially be played out in front of people without a whole lot of space. There are spaces that you can use to play games, but you're going to have to rethink them. And don't think that the only space you can use is some big open air space outside, like a soccer field or a gym. There are spaces all over the place if you learn to see them differently. So I want to take some questions today and answer some of the questions you guys have been asking. I will do my best. So what do we have today, Jonathan?
Yeah, we have a few questions that were written in before we got started, and if you're watching live right now, you can post your questions using the little Q&A tool in the Google Hangout. We'll get to those. First question, how do we log the Bible reading on the record sheets, because the little boxes do not correlate with the number of books or chapters?
Yeah, so when we made this record-keeping card, there was some mistakes that were made to it, so we're openly admitting that up front, but we have some ways to solve this problem. And I've been trying to tell people about it and came to the realization a couple days ago that this just won't work. So what we've decided to do is we're actually going to make a video that specifically shows you how to use the record-keeping card when it comes to the Bible readings and the student Bible studies. You should look for that in the next week or so here, but it will demonstrate exactly what we're talking about. We will show you how to do it, how to do this hack for your book until we can get this record-keeping card fixed properly. But I can explain it to you, but ultimately we're just going to take a bunch of time to say what can be said in a very short. I'll have that out for you in the next week or so here.
Great. Next question. The questions keep coming up about bring a friend requirement, especially with homeschoolers who have been in Awana. It basically exhausted their pool of non-Christian friends, and most of their friends attend church somewhere else or are involved in Awana already. How would you approach this requirement with you?
Well, the first thing I think that I'd like to just, as we talk about this topic, let me clarify a couple things. First of all, I was homeschooled, so I get what you're talking about. I get the problem. I was homeschooled from 5th grade to 11th grade and graduated a year early. By the time I was in middle school and high school, most of my friends were in youth group or from church. So I really empathize with the problem that you're talking about right now. But it begs a question that I guess I'm going to have to push back to you. This bring a friend requirement really is about reaching out to people who aren't saved. And I guess the question that I would ask is, where are we going to evangelize other people? Where are you going to teach your students to evangelize other people? If the first thought is, well, listen, I've already pretty much exhausted all the people I know, so you have no thought that you need to share the good news with other people? Jesus, when he specifically talked to his disciples, didn't say go to Jerusalem. He didn't say stay in your hometown, know the people that are close to you. He didn't say go to Judea, the region around. He didn't say go to Samaria and the othermost parts of the earth. He said all of these things. How are you going to teach your students to evangelize other people? So my suggestion, you're saying, listen, I feel like I've run out of kind of a group of people, non-Christian friends. Join a soccer league. I played basketball in some rec leagues. I met a ton of kids there, and I brought a bunch of them with me to youth group. It may require you to think outside of the church group that you're normally used to associating with, which is what happened to me. It may require you to think about, because you don't go to school, how am I going to make friends that are not Christians? How am I going to teach my student to make friends that are not Christians? How am I going to teach them to talk about their faith to people that they're just getting to know? I want to encourage you in this because I think it's extremely important that we don't simply say, well, let's just kind of hunker down, bunker down, and sit back with our group of friends and say, okay, all of us are going to heaven, and I've told the gospel to everybody who I know that's not or not sure about. I've done my duty and I'm finished. Jesus, when he called his disciples, us, the people that are following him, to share the good news, he didn't give us an excuse to say, well, I've done my quota and let it go. I know that's not what you're saying, but I want to challenge you, to encourage you, to exhort you. Let's help your students find more friends that don't know Jesus so they can keep sharing their faith with them. And that may get involved in some community activities, an art class, a rec league, all kinds of different things that are going on in your community. Go to the couple different places that you're not used to going. We're going to find non-believers when we go places we're not used to going, and that's the places he's called us to go. So I would challenge you to expose them to more people that aren't Christians. Expand that circle if you're going to reach out. Now, you may say, well, you know what, we don't really have enough time. And I get that. There are time constraints and there's some things going on there. But really, I would take advantage of opportunities when you're having, especially as we're coming up on the holidays. You have family that comes in from out of town, bring cousins. Bring relatives. If you have friends that are coming in from out of town to visit other family, invite their kids to come with you to youth group. You're coming up on a fantastic time of year where a whole bunch of people are probably coming to see you or be near you that are coming back to town. You're going to meet a bunch of kids and have the opportunity to expose your students, your children, or leaders, depending on who you're talking to the kids that can come to the group with you. Ultimately, I want you to begin to think, where has God called us to go? So I guess I'm answering the question with a question. Where has God called us to go and share the gospel that we're not currently sharing the gospel? That's the question that I would respond back to the question with. If you don't have enough students that you can bring a friend, then maybe we need to think about how God is calling us to go some places that we haven't been comfortable with before to share the good news of Jesus Christ with those people. And I'd love to hear your story when you're done, because that sounds awesome.
I've got a question about the new Trek book. It's got 32 lessons, and their club does not meet for 32 weeks. Are kids
Okay.
expected to still finish in 1 year?
Yeah, that's a great question. We get this all the time. The answer is fairly simple. We know that, and usually this happens with churches that are running on Sunday night. The group that I'm running is actually running on Sunday night as well, so we're going to run into the same kind of problems. We just got canceled for a fall festival last weekend, so we're going to have to figure out ways to do that. What I would encourage you to do, though, is there are 4 review sections that expand that to 32. The first thing I would do is think through, can you take those 4 review sections, kind of like the old Oasis and the old Trek books, and just basically make that something that they do on their own with their leaders, just to kind of say and go through. That will cut 4 weeks. That'll get you down to 28. That's the first thing you can do that will get some things square for you. They're going to have to do that work to finish the book, yes. If they're trying to earn an award, they're going to have to finish those reviews. But those reviews don't necessarily have to be a lesson. We built them because we think they're great crossroads to stop and reflect not only on where you've been, but where you're going. But if you need to cut them out, you can make that transition in other ways. I guess that would get you down to 28. My next suggestion would be, seriously, sit down and work through a calendar. Actually, scope and sequence out the rest of your year. Put down what lessons you're going to... we figured out if you started the first week of September and took a 2-week break at Christmas, you would be able to finish before the end of April. That's 32 weeks. If you have to cut one because of the Super Bowl, you got to cut one because of Christmas, maybe you got to cut one because of Fall Festival. Now, if you got to cut 4, you're down to 28. If you get below that, they're just going to have to finish without actually doing the lesson to teach as a group. You can still finish the book and the lesson and have them sign off without actually teaching the lesson, if that's what it comes to. But most people, when I've had the conversation with them, when I said you can cut 4 lessons as the review, said, well, I can get it done in 28 weeks.
Okay.
What else you got?
Are kids supposed to write out the Bible summaries or memorize the ones given online?
So we're going to do a blog post on this to explain it a bit better, but here's what I would suggest. It's actually pretty much neither. That sounds weird, but first of all, I don't think memorizing the summaries is really going to serve us well. Now, they can do that if they're nervous and they're trying to figure it out. That's fine. They want to memorize and say them to us. That's fine. I don't want them to. I've had people who write them out. The problem is what tends to happen is they have a tendency just to copy what's on the paper and then turn it in, which doesn't really tell me that you even understood what's going on. The point of the summaries, really, if we're honest, is that we want them to understand what's the book about. And the reason that we're having them say the summaries when they're done reading the book is because we want them to say, and this is the key phrase, their own words. Doesn't have to be memorized. I prefer it in their own words. Tell me what this book was about. Summarize it for me. They're going to say things that were in that on the document online, and they're going to say those things to you so they get the author and the date and all the important information there. But they're also going to say some stuff that's going to reveal to you what did they take away from the book. So this book was about the life of Jesus, but what was it that stuck out to you? And what I've generally seen when I let them summarize it to me is I got all the main ideas from the summary, but they added so much more that they read, that they saw, that they were learning about Jesus reading through one of the Gospels, that they learned from Paul reading through one of the epistles. The point I'm making is I want them to internalize this. This isn't a let's get a check mark. This is a do you know what this book's about? And what was it about when you were reading it? What stuck out to you? What were the main ideas? What really drove home and hit you right in the chest, right in the heart, that started changing you and making you rethink what you believe, made you rethink not only what you've had, but now what you're willing to share with other people and teach to other people. If I can just have them memorize and expect, you know what, you memorized it, you regurgitated it back to me, and now you understand the book. What is it that you really learned in this book as well? And the summary will provide an opportunity to start sharing more than just what they could simply memorize on that page. So, in conclusion, let them say it in their own words. Give it back to you. It should have most of what's there in the summary, but you generally find that they're going to say more, not less.
Okay. And as a reminder for those watching, you can post your questions on using the Q&A tool on the Google Hangout. The Bible, sorry, not Bible, citation ceremonies.
Yes.
We were told more are going to take place this year. When and where are the citation ceremonies happening? And how do I go?
So the citation ceremonies that we had listed previously on the Summit website are happening. The issue that we're running into right now, we're trying to solve this problem as quickly as we can. And essentially that we had was that we needed to get all of the Summit details settled because we couldn't schedule a citation ceremony on the same weekend as one of the summits. So now that the citation details are settled, if you check the new Summit, the website, it'll give you all the registration details. We've already started talking a little bit about the fine arts thing that we were able to bring back. We're super excited about that, and there'll be more details shared on there soon. But if you check back on the Summit website, we will make sure that we include the citation ceremonies. We have just basically gotten all those details finalized. Now that lets us essentially get ready to put together the citation ceremonies so we know what we need to tell you and what dates we're choosing, largely because we don't want to interfere with the other two summits. So we will get that information to you very shortly as soon as we can. But obviously there were several other locations that had people that were trying to work on both locations and dates, and until they got dates, they couldn't start talking to the people at the location to firm and finalize where they're doing it, not just when.
Cool. I think it looks like all the questions right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we've answered everything, and I think our time is almost up anyway. So.
All right. Well, let me just close with something that's encouraging to me, something that I've been seeing happen more and more frequently, and I just want to encourage you as well. There are times, as I've been a youth pastor for a long time, that I've seen students that I thought, man, I'm getting nowhere. There's no growth, nothing happening. This is just a giant waste of time. This kid did not get it. They don't know what we're talking about. But because I've been patient and because I've been keeping track of a lot of my students, I found something fascinating. That even the ones that I thought I wasn't really making a difference in, even the ones that didn't show signs right away as soon as I finished teaching, wow, that was amazing, I love Jesus more, that I'm watching them grow and develop over time and realizing how deep their faith has grown, how much they look back to those moments when they were young, how much those questions that they were asking and wrestling with then provided foundations as they came to answers, that now their faith is being built strong. And I've had the opportunity to witness several of my students who were far from God, even when they were in my youth group, come back to Him well after high school, when I thought I failed, when I thought this whole thing isn't working. I just don't know if I did a good job. And I've watched them come back to their faith, and not necessarily because of me. I didn't bring them back. But I've seen the seeds that I sowed in their life grow. Sometimes with some of them it just took a little longer. So I want to encourage you right now in the middle of fall where everything's falling off the trees and you feel like, you know what? This is how it feels right now. Everything I'm doing is just falling to the ground. It's not working. And I feel like I'm not seeing the progress that I'd hoped to see, and I'm not seeing my students just be super passionate about Jesus right now. Guess what? God's process for discipleship is not something that we can rush. It's not microwave popcorn. You don't just throw it in there and expect like that there'll be results. This isn't a technology metaphor. This is an agricultural metaphor. This is farming. Jesus came at a specific time and told us about planting and reaping, about sowing seed, about watering it, about watching it grow, about weeds, about all kinds of different things, because He knew that in the kingdom of God, things take time. Don't be too quick to judge your performance. Don't be too quick to judge your students as lost or a failure simply because you don't see results quickly. God is working. God is working, even when it feels like you're just not living up to it. Continue to be faithful. And I just want to encourage you that God is working through you even when you don't even realize it. They're watching you. They're listening to you. They're hearing what you say even if you think they're not. Be encouraged. Be patient. God is working. He is working through you. Have a great couple weeks, and we'll talk to you again soon. God bless.